What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with episode number 259 of the Just Jets podcast. I am your host, and today we're going to get into some New York Jets draft narratives that must be put to a stop. The Jets have most of their coaching staff in place. I feel like the Aaron Glenn, the hype has worn down a little bit from the initial press conference. We're a little bit further removed from that. Not quite to the free agency stage. It's a weird spot, this 2-week break between the last, the conference championship round and the Super Bowl. You just had the Senior Bowl this past week. So I feel like we've gotten into, from both, not only like Jets fans, I'm not talking just Jets fans, but, overall NFL landscape coverage. I feel like the draft stuff starts to begin really around the Senior Bowl, and that's the unofficial start of the NFL draft season, at least in my eyes. And sure, there's years where you're doing mock drafts in October, and that really sucks. But I've been noticing an uptick in draft narratives, specifically surrounding the New York Jets, that I think we need to put a stop to. So that's going to be my opening segment. Then we'll get into your voicemails and get into some of your reactions to pretty much just anything Jets going on right now. But let's get started with this first one from NFL insider Lance Zierlein. He put out his mock draft earlier this week. And with the number 7 pick in the 2025 NFL draft, he had the New York Jets selecting running back Ashton Jeanty. Now, Jeanty's a phenomenal player. You could have made the case that he was the Heisman winner this year. Travis Hunter playing both ways, I think, had a monster factor in that. But no one's denying, myself included, I'm not saying that Jeanty out of Boise State is like some bad player. He's not. He is worthy. He's a running back worthy of going in the first round. That is for sure. Why would the Jets take a running back 7th overall? I get it. Breece Hall did not have his best season in 2024. It was a little bit, you could even say that it was a little bit underwhelming. That's fine. But a running back room of Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, and Braylon Allen is more than capable in today's NFL. If the Jets had absolutely nobody at the position, okay, maybe we could have this discussion. Now, personally, I don't love the idea of taking running backs in the first round to begin with, so that's an obstacle that I would have to overcome. But certainly not when you're rostering Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. I just, that one was really hard for me to compute here. Again, just because I'm not willing to give up on Breece Hall yet. The Jets ran the ball the fewest amount of times in the NFL last year. He only averaged 13 carries per game. There was not a single game where he received over 20 carries in a game. I think really over the last couple of years, they have completely misused him in the passing attack. Yes, 2 years ago, it took halfway through the season, and then in the second half from the Giants game on, it felt like Nathaniel Hackett was getting Breece Hall involved in the passing attack. But too far this year, we didn't see Breece Hall really utilized as a pass catcher like I thought we would. Look at how, you look at the Detroit Lions, and Tanner Engstrand, the offensive coordinator, comes from Detroit. Look at how they use Jahmyr Gibbs in the passing attack. That should be exactly how you are using Breece Hall in this offense. And I don't know. I'd be willing to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4th year with Breece Hall. Another year removed from the injury. And on top of that, I get it. He's going into a contract year. All well and good. But especially with how the running back market tends to work, if you don't want to give him that long-term contract extension, you could franchise tag the guy. Franchise him after this year if you're not extending him. And we'll see after where my stance is at the end of the year on giving a new contract to Breece Hall. But if we get to draft weekend and Thursday night, it's myself, Ryan, and Green Bean on the stream. We're settling in. All right, Jets on the clock, 7th overall. And they're taking a running back? The Jets have a lot of issues. The running back room is very far down on the list of concerns for me. right now. That would feel like a complete waste in the top 10. Now let's get to Matt Miller of ESPN. In his mock draft, he did a 2-round mock draft, and he had the Jets taking Quinn Ewers in the 2nd round. Gross. I want no part of Quinn Ewers. Now, I'm a very casual college football fan. I really just watch for specific players, and around this time of year is when I will take a look at the guys in the draft and research and see who I like, why I like them, maybe why I don't like this prospect, why are they ranked here, so on and so forth. But the team I tend to watch the most is Texas. So I would say I'm a very, very, very casual Texas Longhorns fan. But again, that's the team that I watch the most in college football. I haven't seen anything over the last few years that make me want the Jets to draft Quinn Ewers. That's a guy who's technically my quarterback in air quotes, using that term very loosely. I'm really excited to see the Arch Manning experience. Ewers has gotten injured a ton in college. I don't think he has the arm to translate at the next level, and he's been extremely inconsistent. Last year around this time, he was looked at as maybe a mid-round pick, somewhere between the 3rd and 5th round, and then he decides to go back to school, and I gave him a lot of credit for that decision because I thought, okay, off a good year, maybe he gets himself into the 1st round. Well, he didn't have a good season. He's probably, at least in my opinion, he should probably be a late day 2, early day 3 pick. And I personally, from what I've seen, that would not be the guy that I would target in the NFL draft for the New York Jets. But in the 2nd round with a top 50 pick, no. That is a narrative that I will not be pushing. Quinn Ewers to the New York Jets in the 2nd round, can't get there. And speaking of quarterbacks in this very mid quarterback class, the narrative that now Jackson Dart is in play at 7 is also gross. And yeah, maybe I'm the hypocrite because I did a mock draft this week with Jackson Dart to the New York Jets. The reason why I did that was not because that's me advocating for the New York Jets to do it, as I explained in the video. I do a different style of mock each week, and coming out of the Senior Bowl, all anyone could talk about was Jackson Dart going in the 1st round. And I had Jets fans in my DMs and tweeting at me and everything and commenting in videos talking Jackson Dart at 7, Jackson Dart at 7. There was enough to the point where I said, I'll do a mock draft so we can at least see what it could look like. And I just can't get there. Now, if the Jets took Jackson Dart, in the 3rd round with whatever draft pick they, I believe it's a late 80s. It's, the later pick in the 3rd round. Okay. It's a dart throw. Pardon the pun. It's a dart throw at a quarterback. But 7th overall, that's someone who's coming in with some expectation. Hell, Christian Hackenberg, when the Jets drafted him in 2016 in the 2nd round, you drafted him. You drafted quarterback in the first 2 rounds. There's some expectation there. And for Hackenberg, the guy couldn't play. He was unplayable. He was horrible in NFL training camp and practices. Abysmal. He should have never gone that high. And I think we're going to get into that with Jackson Dart. I think he's going to get overdrafted because they'll look, there's a lot of quarterback needy teams in this league, and there is no clear-cut quarterback 3. And for me, I think we're going to see 2 quarterbacks go probably in the top 6 in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders in whatever order you want to put them in. And I think there's, legitimate concerns with both of those guys, but there's also some traits with both of those guys that I think you could maybe sell yourself on a little bit more than a Jackson Dart. But if we're looking in April and Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe are 1st round picks and Quinn Ewers is a 2nd round pick, I feel like you're just wasting time at that point. It's too valuable of a draft pick in a class that is, so deep at other positions of need that it doesn't make sense to me. Which is honestly a perfect segue into my other point, which was that the Jets have to come away with a quarterback in this year's draft at some point, because there is no quarterback on the future. Please don't force a quarterback pick. Unless Darren Muji or Aaron Glenn is circling someone and going, that's our guy, we want that guy, and we're pounding the table for him, I guess fine. But I don't see who that person is in this draft class. I feel like you're just taking a quarterback to take a quarterback. And if the Jets don't come away with drafting Kyle McCord in the 5th round, am I going to say this is an absolute failure of a draft class because they didn't take a mid-round dart throw at the quarterback position? No, frankly, no. Because again, I don't think this is the class for it. If you're putting up this NFL quarterback class or this NFL draft class at the quarterback position up against last year's, where are these guys ranking on the list? Or some of them who's going to go in the mid-rounds this year wouldn't be in the top 10 of last year's draft class of the quarterbacks. I'm not saying top 10 draft picks, top 10 quarterbacks that were taken last year. It's crazy. So no, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you today in early February that it's gonna be some abject failure if the Jets don't take a quarterback, or they gotta. What do you mean? You took a tight end, or you took an interior defensive lineman, or a corner, or a linebacker in the 4th round. You're telling me you don't want to take a swing on Kyle McCord or the Notre Dame quarterback, or the Ohio State quarterback? No, not really. No, I'm not gonna plant my flag on that hill and be like they have to take a quarterback. not this year. The trade back discourse. Look, this gets brought up a lot for the New York Jets, and they need to trade back in the draft. And I'm open to the idea of a trade back. I think it's just so much easier said than done, right? Every year we hear they got to trade back. Well, part of the process too is you need someone who wants to trade up. It takes 2 to tango. And where the Jets are at 7, I don't know if they're going to be in a position where a team's going to want to move up the draft board and the Jets can move down to 15 and get a 2nd round pick in the process. Sure, if you could actually put that out there, then yes, by all means, if that's a situation that's presented to you, okay, let's do it. But going into this draft and being like, they can't pick it, they can't take a pick at 7, they got to trade back. Who in the 12 to 18 range, because that's probably what you're getting. You're swapping and getting a 2nd round pick in that range, and maybe there's some later picks or whatever to even it out a little bit more. What are those teams trading up for? Is someone going to trade up with the Jets for the running back, Ginty? There's not a quarterback that someone's going to be trading up for. A corner? A safety? What is it? And at that point, are the Jets just better off sticking and picking with best available at number 7? And honestly, I think that's another perfect segue to my close here of this longer-winded introduction. Maybe that's the play for the Jets at 7. Because I'm getting real tired of, they have to come away, they got to draft this guy, one specific guy, or this one specific position. And it happened last year too. It's got to be the tight end no matter what. It's Brock Bowers or nothing. I can't even wrap my head around why the Jets would draft an offensive lineman. Or are you kidding me? They absolutely must draft an offensive lineman. Don't talk to me about, Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or Brock Bowers. Like, it's such a small-minded place to put yourself in. If you can't think of the other scenarios that might be in play. For the Jets at 7, I think you can make a legitimate case for interior defensive line because it's a major position of need behind Quinnen Williams. Edge, if Abdul Carter falls. I don't think he will, but adding a player of Abdul Carter's caliber to the edge room where you have really just 2 guys and one of them's coming off an Achilles injury in Jermaine Johnson. A corner to replace DJ Reed because in all likelihood, Reed's walking in free agency. Someone will pay him cornerback 1 money. You can make the case for a corner. If Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers aren't back, you can make the case for a wide receiver too, because then it's quickly Garrett Wilson and nothing. They don't have good tight ends on this roster right now because Tyler Conklin's a free agent. Tyler Warren, I think, could absolutely be in play and is 7, maybe a little early for a tight end. Maybe, right? And you'll say, well, you take a Tyler Warren at 7, but you won't take Brock Bowers at 10. Well, difference is you have a left tackle this year in Olu Fashanu. But Tyler Warren, I think, should be in play. And maybe an offensive tackle to fill the right tackle spot. Because maybe the staff doesn't feel comfortable with the idea of running back Morgan Moses, who was hurt this past year. And maybe they just want to finish the offensive line and be like, all right, we're done. We have that figured out. That group is good, solid going forward. And I don't think we could, and I'm not saying that I would necessarily do this because it goes back to the positional thing. I would have a hard time taking a safety in the top 10, but I don't think you could rule it out with this defensive-minded head coach and their philosophy and the fact that the Jets have absolutely nothing at the position. Now, it'll depend on what happens in free agency, and you can make that argument for all the positions that I just listed above. But it bothers me that as a fan base, and for some content creators, not all, but I feel like there's some people who's like, oh, they absolutely, it's got to be this guy or it's a failure of a draft. Like that's so stupid. So stupid. You can make the case for the Jets to do so many different things at the top of this draft, with the 7th overall pick. And that's not me being a Jets homer. So it's so funny. I feel like I can't win. In the span of the same week, I was called a Jets homer and a Jets hater. I'm way too positive on the Jets. I only praise them. And you're too negative. You're letting the negative fans influence you. Well, which is it? Because I feel like if I'm just trying, what I try to do is stick down the middle, and if I like something, be honest about it, and if I don't like something, also be honest about it, and just tell it like it is. And maybe I do. I would think that I tend to skew more on the positive side. I don't think I'm a doom and gloomer. But at the same time, too, you got to be semi-realistic as well. Like, I'm not going to predict the Jets to win 12 games this year. Sorry. I'm also not predicting them to win 3 games this year. So let's let it play out. We let the draft process play out here, and let's not force these just frankly embarrassing draft narratives anymore. That's my little rant here at the start. Let's go to the voicemails. We got Main Jet calling up first.
Hi, Matt. This is Main Jet. Just wanted to point out that I did like the hiring of Aaron Glenn, and 3 points that I want to make that I feel are very important as to whether Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are going to work out in New York. Number 1 is Darren Muji. I do not know if he has the ability to bring talent in through the door constantly year after year. In my opinion, Joe Douglas did a good job of doing that. Of course, if you miss on the quarterback, you miss on the offensive line. That's the ultimate death punch, and I understand why he got fired. But with that said, can Darren Muji provide him with the talent? Because there's a lot of good coaches in the NFL, including Aaron Glenn. But they got to have talent to work with. That's number 1. Number 2, is Aaron Glenn prepared to do the same things that Bill Parcells used to do, in that Parcells would just get pissed off. He would get sick and tired of seeing the product that he was seeing on the field when they were losing, and he says, I'm going to make some changes, I'm going to do whatever I have to do, and he would start benching players. I never saw that with other coaches, besides maybe Rex Ryan a few times, like with Sherry Rhodes. So I want to see that more moving forward. And number 3 is...
It got cut there, but we'll go to the next one.
Hi, Matt. This is Main Jet calling back on point number 3. Apologize for being a dingbat in the first call.
You're good, brother.
My third point out. So here I am getting it out now. The third point is, can he work with who he has? Okay, now, on offense, this is going to be the death punch for Aaron Glenn. Who he hires for the coaching staff, because the offense has just been a literal failure for years upon years, and I am convinced that at least in the skill positions, wide receiver, tight end, left tackle, because now we have Olu Fashion, and I look forward to that in the future, that they have good players, that they have a good ground basics, Breece Hall, of good players on offense. They got to rebuild the offensive line, and they got to get coaches that are going to get the offense going. So, in my opinion, if you go back to it, number 1, the point on Darren Muji. Number 2, the point on Aaron Glenn being willing to bench players if he doesn't see the product going the way it is, okay, the way it needs to be, or the high standards under which the Jets should be playing right now, given all the talent they have on that team. And number three, what I just spoke about. So there I am, and I would like you to answer to that. And once again, go Jets. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to say I am very excited about Aaron Glenn. I love this press conference. Bye.
You should be. I thought it was an exciting press conference. And I get it that, the people who say, I'm tired of winning press conferences. I want to see them win on the field. That's the next step. But you're telling me you felt the exact same way after watching Adam Gase's press conference and then watching Aaron Glenn's press conference, or even Robert Saleh's press conference? I didn't. And to reference something that you brought up here and making the comparison to Bill Parcells, Glenn is not Parcells, because Parcells is in a tier, unlike the rest with what he was able to accomplish at the NFL level. Highly, highly decorated coach. But what I am excited about from Aaron Glenn is how he has worked under Parcells, or he's coached by Parcells, but then he worked under Sean Payton. And those are two guys that he has significant relationships with, that he trusts and that he leans on. And having guys like that as your confidant, I think, is really important. And I think it will matter. And answering your question on the accountability thing, I loved his answer on how they're going to sit there and evaluate the whole roster with a clean slate. It's not, what did the last regime think of, this guy? They're going to make their own judgments. And if you're not playing up to par, you're going to hear about it. And while I would still personally classify Aaron Glenn as a player's coach, it's different. It's a different style than what Robert Saleh had, which is something that bothers me when people say this is just Robert Saleh 2.0 because he's a defensive coordinator. Yes, the comparison to another defensive coordinator as a first-time head coach, that's valid. But that's where the comparison, I think, stops. And the more I watched Aaron Glenn speak and the more that I've, dug into his history, they come from very different paths. Glenn played in the league. Glenn was a scout. Glenn was a positional coach, then DC, then head coach. Robert Saleh didn't play in the league. And he's, in my opinion, more of a defensive mastermind guy who just couldn't figure it out at the next level. I wouldn't classify Aaron Glenn as this defensive mastermind. And the numbers show it. And that's okay, because the Jets didn't hire Aaron Glenn to be a defensive coordinator. They hired him to be their leader. And I think that's the main difference. The Jets need that strong leader. That's why I wanted someone like Mike Vrabel the most. And then when that option wasn't available, I thought Aaron Glenn was a good pivot. So thank you for the call, Main Jet. I think it's some valid points to bring up. Let's go to David up next in New Jersey.
Yeah, Matt, I'm calling from Jersey. I'm David. I'm a Jets fan since '87. And I have a problem with bringing back Rodgers because I felt that when I look at all the games he played, he was running the show. He played a certain way. He changed the call a lot. You think the coaches now can get Rodgers to play into their scheme, and you still have to wonder who's going to be the offensive coordinator, and if he's going to want to play into that scheme. If he's too old to want to change.
All right. So the call was a little bit tough to hear, so sorry to cut it short on you, David, but essentially what he was saying is Aaron Rodgers going to want to go in and do whatever this new offensive coordinator is going to want to do? Or is it going to be, no, we're going to continue to do things my way? And if that's the case, because we don't know, but then I don't think it is a good idea to bring back Aaron Rodgers. In the same conversation, if Rodgers wants to take another historic pay cut like he did a couple of years ago, if he was willing to learn a new offense, if it's not going to be the Aaron Rodgers, calling the plays at the line of scrimmage, and that he's above everyone else on this, on the team, and he's just one of the 53, then you can make a case for bringing Aaron Rodgers back. The thing is, we just have no idea what it is that he actually, genuinely wants here. So I I'm really curious to see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks here. And right now it's the week of the Super Bowl, and we've heard from Thomas Dimitroff, who interviewed for the New York Jets job. He thinks that most of the candidates said that they want to move on from Rodgers, and he specifically mentioned that he wanted to move on from Aaron Rodgers. But you've also had the people saying that Aaron Glenn wants to keep him. We don't know. There's no way to know that yet. But by the end of the month, I bet we have our answer. By the time the NFL Combine is here at the end of the month, I think we know if Rodgers is playing for the Jets or not in 2025. Peter from Hudson Valley up next.
Hey, man. It's Peter calling from the beautiful Hudson Valley on this Monday, early evening, to talk about the Jets coaching staff hires so far. It looks like it's shaping up quite nicely. I did just see the video you put out today, Monday, the 3rd, about the 2 latest hires that I guess you were more, say, lukewarm on. My thoughts are, it seems like, obviously with the quarterback coach, it wasn't the one they wanted because they were denied the request to
David Blau.
get the guy from the Commanders, so they could not interview him, so they had to go to London as a fallback position. But with regards to Turner, I think it's good to have someone who's an offensive assistant who actually has some experience in the league, like Wilkes on the defensive side. So unless they hire someone else on the offensive side who's got even more experience, I think that's at least something that, will help out the offensive side of things. Now, speaking of that, there's 2 positions, well, 3, I think, right now, that don't necessarily have anyone even named yet. Chris Harris, I think, is going to be the DB's coach, maybe a defensive quality control guy, but they haven't made that official yet. But we don't have a running back coach, and we don't have a tight ends coach. And one of the positions that, was held over, obviously, was Sean Jefferson. That's a good
wide receiver.
Wilson. Do you think they should have also held over Ron Middleton as the tight ends coach? Because I know he seemed to be favored among Jets fans. But also, obviously, the tight ends didn't produce really well last year.
That's where
we know.
I'm at.
I mean, Conklin had a decent season, but we know that Ruckert regressed, and Yabel only came on late because he was injured during most of the year. So I'd like to see Middleton back, but I'm just wondering if maybe they haven't, decided to bring him back because of, the overall production or lack thereof within the tight end group. But one thing I did want to comment on, and you
Sure.
can tell me, your thoughts on Middleton, is the fact that of all the coaches, it seems like the greater majority are African American. And I'm glad to see that. I've been waiting for some team, especially as Jets, being as a Jets fan, to have an African American head coach and put together a staff to elevate guys, throughout the league who are African American, so that they start to, get more experience overall. And I think it's a good thing to see. Like, I don't believe Tomlin's staff is that much African American. We saw that people like Gerard Mayo and the Raiders coach, I can't think of it right now, did not seem to have much of an opportunity. They only got 1 year at it. So it's good to see this type of thing, and I want to see more of this going forward, and hopefully that's the way things will be. But let me know your thoughts on Ron Middleton and what the other, coaches may be to round out the staff. And as always, go Jets.
Thank you for the call, Peter. And I have, some thoughts on, everything that you mentioned here. I'll start with Ron Middleton. I'm good with them not bringing him back because, unfortunately, I don't think we saw enough development at the tight end position. He's a really likable guy, right? Like, I love the speech that he had at the Senior Bowl a couple of years ago. And he was the interim head coach for a game when Robert Saleh was out with COVID in his first season. And there's things you could really like about him, but I'm okay with Glenn and Engstrand bringing in their own guy because personally, I didn't think there was enough tangible evidence to show that, Middleton was working out and doing a good job here. And sometimes I just think getting fresh voices in there in an offense that frankly hasn't been very good over the last few years is a good thing. I do think that. And to your second point there, you look around the league and there's a narrative going on right now that, black coaches are being scapegoated and getting these one and done scenarios for these teams. Like Lovie Smith with the Texans is another example. You brought up Gerard Mayo. And there's been David Culley's and another one also with the Texans. And, you bring up an interesting point there. It shouldn't have to be that way. And I truly believe that you hire the most qualified guys. And if it's if it's a black person, white person, to me, that's not something that I'm really taking into a huge account with. But to your point, the Jets have actually been, I know that like Woody Johnson gets a lot of shit and deservedly so. The Jets have been relatively progressive in that area. They had, Todd Bowles, they hired a black coach in Todd Bowles, Herm Edwards. They hired the first Muslim head coach in Robert Saleh. And I'm not saying you hire you hire Robert Saleh just because he's, you want him to be your first Muslim head coach, or you hire, a woman GM or a woman coach just because of that reason. No. But it's time that the NFL gets up with the modern times, I think, is the point that Peter is trying to make, and the point that I also am trying to make. So good call out there. And there are, this is a very former player heavy staff for the Jets. And I like that change the most, that it's not just guys who, went up through the coaching ranks and started as an intern and then worked their way up that way. No, these guys played in the league. And I think the players will respect that the most. So that's what excites me, Peter. I'll add that to this call as well. Let's close from PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Thank you, as always, for taking my call. I want to give a shout-out to Peter from the beautiful Hudson Valley. I'm right with you, brother. When I heard the new GM and it was mispronounced Moogie, I was like, Moogie! Moogie! Big Star Trek fan. Immediately thought of the mother from the Ferengis. And, Matt, in case you're not aware, in Ferengi society, the females, as they call them, are not allowed to wear clothes.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
Moogie actually broke the mode and wore clothes, and it was big controversy there in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So I just want to give a shout out to Peter from the beautiful Hudson Valley, that he's not the only one who thought of that. And thankfully, the pronunciation is Muji, so we don't have to deal with it for the next 5, 10, hopefully 20 years that Muji is the GM. Other thing I'll say about Star Trek, just as an aside, is Captain Kirk would have made a tremendous head coach in the NFL. But anyway, I want to mention, you had about a week ago a YouTube about Woody Johnson's comments on during the press conference, the introductory press conference, and yeah, he said some really good things. And in my opinion, he has been over-criticized. He is an owner who spends the money, who his heart is in the right place. He really wants to win, and he will often stay out of the way. Now, he doesn't always stay out of the way at the Tim Tebow thing, but you point out to me that he didn't get into, Joe Douglas's shorts until, things are going wrong and he felt he had to step in. And that's generally what he does. So, again, I think as an owner, he now has the right people in place. Hopefully he stays out of the way. And we could do a lot worse than Woody Johnson as the owner. So anyway, Matt O'Leary, want to get your thoughts on that. But as always, go Jets.
Thank you for the call in. As always, love the history lesson. I'm not a Star Trek guy, so I didn't understand the reference. A lot of people, though, you guys weren't the only ones who made that reference, though. So I'm glad to have the clarification. On Woody Johnson, I'll say this. Look, I've been pretty critical of Woody Johnson. That's no secret. The thing that I will give him credit for, and I hope that he sticks to it, is if he stays out of the way and lets Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji do their job, then I think this could be successful. And he did wait a while before he got involved with Joe Douglas. And he gives guys long leashes, which I guess you could say is a benefit, that they're not, one and done guys very often. Then maybe there is a path to success. I really hope this is the duo that works out, because Aaron Glenn is just so easy to root for as a former player. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, Matt O'Leary here. Subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you next time.